showed up in the training program at Lehman Brothers, having no clue that I was any different than anybody else. I'd gotten out of Harvard, but again, I got there. I didn't think, hey, I'm going to be in the minority, vastly male dominated. I didn't think about it. And I didn't really think about it that much, to be honest, through the training program. I just focused on what I was trying to do, which was learn, build, and outwork everyone. I didn't really think, oh, I'm in a minority or I deserve something or I don't. I just worked hard.
Welcome to Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, the go-to podcast for financial advisors aiming to grow their assets under management, stand out in a crowded market, and retain assets nearly forever. Are you advising high net worth clients who own appreciated capital assets? Do you want to help them sell without losing a quarter, a third, or even more of their hard-earned profits to capital gains taxes? Then this podcast is tailored for you. Each episode brings you the latest strategies and expert advice from leading financial advisors, seasoned attorneys, and experienced CPAs. Learn how to maximize your clients' wealth, minimize their taxes, and supercharge your advisory practice with actionable insights. Join us on Sterling Insights, Stand Out and Supercharge Your Assets, where you'll gain the knowledge and tools to set yourself apart and achieve unparalleled success in wealth management. Subscribe now and empower your practice for a brighter, more prosperous future. Welcome to Sterling Insights. I'm your host, Roger Silk. Our guest today is Lori Van Dusen. Lori is a nationally recognized financial advisor and the founder of LVW Advisors. She has over 30 years of experience, and she has built a top-ranked firm serving high net worth clients and mission-driven organizations across the United States. Lori is a Barron's Hall of Fame inductee, a Forbes top advisor, and the author of the Wall Street Journal bestseller, Running with Grace. Lori, it is a pleasure to have you. Thank you for joining Sterling Insights.
Thank you.
I saw just before we started recording that there's an article about you. Seems as good a place to start as any. It focuses on you as an advisor, but also specifically, as I read it, to women and the upcoming generation of women-owned wealth.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I was known for that historically. I just met clients, whoever they were, where they were at. It wasn't that I ever sought out to advise women or next-gen clients, but the practical matter of it is there are not many women in this industry. There are very few women-led firms, and there are very few people that are leading a firm that have been doing it as long as I have as a woman. It makes a lot of sense because there is a transfer that's significant going on of wealth to both women and millennials. They're huge. Millennials are a huge demographic. They're changing everything in every way we think about things. A lot of the people that we've interacted with most recently who have become clients are women younger, 30s, 40s, but also kind of people all over the map. Our typical client is not typical. We're not a mass affluent kind of high net worth advisory firm. We've always just solved complicated problems. Seemed to me that ultimately I also would have a succession problem if I continued to be the rainmaker and the person closing the business, managing the money. Sorry for the long guy. There's always the long guy when you're having these conversations.
Yeah, that's no problem at all. It's one of the beauties of this forum is we can take long versions. Where maybe if I'm going to ask you back up a little bit, how did you get started? And give us the quick overview of your career, which I think is very closely related to LVW.
My career, yes, thank you. My career started in the World Trade Center in 1987 when I was hired by Lehman Brothers. Legally, it was Lehman Brothers at the time, but I went to the Shearson side. My training program was the top of the World Trade Center with a cubicle, a desk, and a phone, and 300 people, roughly, I think, two women. And I started basically in the wirehouse business, just dialing for dollars.
Hmm.
And when I showed up there, my path was very circuitous to Wall Street. I have a Master of Education from Harvard, not exactly related to what I do now.
Well, because isn't a fair amount of it educating the clients?
It is. And I always say that I have a pretty deep as a young person music background, and my degrees are nothing related to finance, my undergraduate degrees or my graduate degree, but I did spend a fair amount of time in the business school at the Baker School at Harvard because I loved it. But all of these things together build a pattern of skills, I think. And I always loved the idea of managing money, the stock market. And that came from my grandfather, who was not a wealthy guy, but was a first generation Italian American who just lived his own little version of the American dream and wanted something better for his kids, but the world wasn't really ready for his daughter to become an entrepreneur or go to Wall Street. As a matter of fact, I tell the story about my mom, who was a single mother, who was the controller for our small family business, who wrote letters to people all the time, about whether we were trying to collect payment or whatever it was, but she was the finance person with no training, and she would have to sign it A. Van Dusen. And I always asked her about what it was like being a woman at that period of time. And she said, if I would have written to somebody and signed it Alice Van Dusen, they wouldn't have done business with our company, because it wasn't that long ago that women couldn't handle the money of the family. They couldn't have their own money. They couldn't make investments. People need to go back. I'm not an activist in any way. In my own little way, maybe about a lot of things, but I'm not somebody who talks about being a woman in finance very often. I get asked about it a lot, but I just think that the history of women being able to do what I've done is not that long.
Yeah.
And so my grandfather coached me, really mentored me a lot as a child, and he loved the market. So I always thought, why don't I take a shot at this? And I showed up in the training program at Lehman Brothers, having no clue that I was any different than anybody else. I'd gotten out of Harvard. But again, I got there. I didn't think, hey, I'm going to be in the minority, vastly male dominated. I didn't think about it. And I didn't really think about it that much, to be honest, through the training program. I just focused on what I was trying to do, which was learn, build, and outwork everyone. I didn't really think, oh, I'm in a minority or I deserve something or I don't. I just worked hard.
Yeah. Yeah. So you were at Harvard in the education school,
That's where I graduated from. Yeah.
and then you went to Lehman. That's not an obvious move. How did that happen?
There was a move in between where I went to Xerox Corporation because I came back from Harvard, and in that period of time, really had no idea what I wanted to do. I came back home. I started interviewing with companies, and my grandfather said, you should try Xerox. They have a great training program. So I ended up at Xerox, and I was in the sales training program selling copiers. So I always tell
Okay.
people it's really interesting because here I had a Harvard degree. I didn't again feel like I just wanted to learn. So I'm like, okay. And then it turned out that I was very successful at that as a young woman, and they promoted me, and I began selling these big pieces of equipment and whatever technology was at the time. Xerox really invented the PC and has early roots in the internet. It was an amazing place to be. And it
Yeah.
also was weirdly very diverse and embraced diversification of the workforce really early on. So again, before I got to Wall Street, I really didn't have this notion that it was a male dominated industry. So I went there and I'm like, I built confidence. I went to graduate school. I think I could take a shot at what I've been thinking about and wanting to do. Didn't know a lot about the business itself, finance, being a stockbroker, which is what I was. But it was a hot job. Like everybody wanted to do it back then. And so I showed up there. I took all the tests. I passed them, probably to their surprise, and they had to hire me. And then it was, here's your desk, here's your phone, here's your $24,000 a year draw. So draw meaning you have to pay us back. And that's what I did. And then I became one of the top producers at Shearson Lehman Brothers, which became Smith Barney. Built an institutional advisory business, which is a long story, but the short version is I started to the background in education, like doing seminars and teaching. And one of my clients early on said, I sit on this board and they need somebody like an advisor like you that asks the kinds of questions you ask. And it was a agricultural related endowment at Cornell University. And I showed up, asked a bunch of questions, looked at their portfolio in advance, asked some more questions, helped solve some problems, and got hired. And that was my first quote unquote institutional client. And then I
Uh-huh. So this was with when you were it was Lehman in those days?
No, it was Shearson Lehman Brothers, and then it was in between, I don't know, Shearson Lehman Hutton, and then it became Smith Barney at some point. Shearson Smith, I don't know.
In a long time. I don't
I
right.
never went anywhere is the takeaway. I just stayed in the same place and the firms
Yeah,
kept
right.
merging and going away. But
Right. So you were at some how long you joined and the date and they had the training program? Was it sales training or was it
yeah, it
the
was basically here's how you get clients and dial for dollars because no one cared about I shouldn't say it this way, but it was true. They just cared about making money, the firm. So they were just
oh
like, go out there and sell a product, sell a
yeah,
stock, get a commission.
right. Uh-huh. So you were dialing for dollars and somehow you came across this Cornell.
Well, it was a lot longer story than that, but I didn't like the industry. I didn't like dialing for dollars. I didn't think it was the right thing to do. I didn't think it was fair to anybody to not understand their situation. So I would just call people up and ask them questions like, what do you do for a living? If you're retired, tell me about your family. How did you make your money? What worries you the most? What are some of the problems you're facing? What do you want to have happen to this money when you die? Because I initially started calling the RP list
Uh-huh.
because I figured it wasn't a huge leap to figure out that older people probably had more money. So I was raised by an older person, so I could relate to a lot of things and I love talking to older people. So I just started that way, just asking questions. I never really sold stocks, bonds. I never sold anything. I fought it from probably the first day. I didn't believe that's how you should do the business. So I just started gathering information and then gathering assets and then figuring out what was broken and how to fix it once I understood the overarching issues that the client or the family was having. So it was an unorthodox at the time way to do business, which probably to some of your listeners is going to sound crazy, but nobody was doing it.
Right. No, I remember that nobody was doing it in those days. In fact, I was going to ask you, how did you even, without selling them stocks and bonds, how did you manage their money?
Now that I'm pretty sure I'm beyond the window of time where I could get arrested by the compliance police, I back then I would send a bill based on their assets. So if I gathered $5 million in assets, which was a lot of money at that time, I would bill them a fee on it. This also sounds crazy. There's a process that you could hard dollar bill a client, it was called. You could charge them on their assets in the institutional advisory world. So I just figured I'd apply it to my entire client base. So I probably was the early adopter of recurring revenue in the business. So
Uh-huh.
instead
Uh-huh.
of taking a commission, you could charge a hard dollar fee and say, I'm going to charge this much. And I would just calculate out what basis points it was on the assets. I would send that bill to New York City where they had a department that would then credit me back a certain percentage of it. It sounds
Uh-huh.
insane, but that is what I did. And I just got around like all the commissions. So there was a way to, at the time, forgive the commission and just charge a fee. So I don't know where that commission went, but it didn't go to me. So I did that. I'm sure sometimes I don't really remember. In the past, I took commission on things, but I didn't then bill a fee, and I always disclosed it. Nobody was doing that either. And I always believed in disclosing the underlying fees of a product, a fund, or whatever it was, if it wasn't a straight stock or bond. And so it was just an innate thing. It wasn't like I just didn't think I was doing anything that smart. It was the way I thought I should do the business to avoid all the conflicts of interest. And there were tons of them.
And then how did you move from that was that then you founded LVW?
Yeah, it was many years later. I was a successful financial advisor. By that time, I'd helped start certain organizations and things around this whole idea of giving advice and not selling products and not doing, as we joked, there was a small group of us that would joke, we're not doing due diligence on an investment for distribution. We're doing it because we think it could potentially be a great investment for the client. So I built my own little research team, had really tried to make it work, wanted to be spun off within the Smith Barney system to do something separate. And by the time I felt like I fought the last battle, and that things weren't, I wasn't being resourced well for what I wanted to do. I left. And that was August 31st, 2008, about a month before we were like in the teeth of the financial crisis.
Wow. That's
Yeah,
when you set up shop on your own?
I did. And that's when I joined a large RIA. And that was because we had about $5.8 billion in assets under management and complicated clients. And I felt, at least what I thought at the time, was that they had resources to in place already so that I didn't need to be distracted by building them. I was in on the executive team of that firm. I was made an executive of that firm. I wasn't really, oh, I need to be the grand person or the president or the CEO. I just need to be able to do this the right way for my clients. And I think the industry is going to independence. And obviously, it might not be obvious either, but in 2008, it was not obvious that there was going to be this huge move to the RIA space from the wirehouses or anywhere else. To me, again, it wasn't like I just thought this is common sense, and the only way I'm going to be able to really give advice in an unconflicted way is to not have a broker dealer and be completely independent. And I just couldn't, with that amount of assets under management and complicated, sophisticated clients, I decided to join an RIA. The financial crisis hit. I was immediately sued by Citigroup, which at the time was the largest bank in the world, and they owned Smith Barney. Ultimately, I won, but it went to arbitration. That was
What
24 months.
what were they alleging?
Oh, lots of things. Like, there were some hilarious charges against me, like corporate raiding.
Yeah.
So I don't think that if you saw, even though I had a large practice at $5.8 billion, the size of that compared to the whole branch, while I was the big producer, I wasn't, yes, it probably hurt the branch, but it did not hurt Citigroup. There was a whole bunch of charges, trumped up things. And in the end, it went to FINRA arbitration. It cost a lot of money. I lost almost every single one of my institutional clients through it, but we won. And
Yeah.
so at the time we won, I thought, I'm still supposed to do this, so I have to carry on. And there were offers on the table for me to join other large companies, but I didn't want to go back to the future. So I talked with my husband. I did a lot of soul searching and praying. And then I just formed my own company and had to pretty much rebuild it with my great team of people who followed me everywhere. My great team of people, because the other thing, when you have that kind of sophisticated client base and you're a mom and you're family oriented, you have to figure out how early on to give away cash flow and mentor people. And so I built a pretty significant team of people that were dragged through all this stuff, were named in the lawsuit, and followed me on to form LVW, which was in 2011.
And so tell us a little bit about LVW. How big are you in terms of how many employees? What's your client base like? That kind of thing.
Our client base is probably three verticals. For a lot of business owners, people pre and post monetization of a business, men and women. I think my point earlier was we're seeing more women business owners than ever before. Professional, small vertical of professional athletes and entertainers, and then professional investors, people who run some kind of a hedge fund that we manage the rest of their wealth, or maybe they're an institutional investor in real estate and we're doing the kind of cohesive financial planning and running the liquid portfolio and some of the other stuff. So professional investors. And I guess the fourth vertical, obviously, again, going back in time, would be the institutional clients that we have, which are now smaller and small to mid-sized versus what we had prior to the Citigroup lawsuit, which were some larger institutions, all not-for-profits, colleges, universities, associations, a lot of affiliated with things I care about: health, wellness, the arts, education. So our business is a really values-based business. We have, I don't know exactly, I think about 25 people. Would have to sit and count right now. But oops, I just lost you. I lost your audio.
Oh, it should be back now. Are you guys growing?
Yeah, this year we've taken on a bunch of new clients, I would say, and I will put a little bit of a framework around this. I still probably am the key business development person. It's what I love, and I really don't get involved in the day-to-day management of the company itself. I have great people who do that. I have great advisors, and so I'm more of a CEO type where I'm more of a strategist, a 30,000 foot person. I go where I'm needed in terms of clients, and I'm a business development person. It's really, for me, where I've ended up as a result of some really sudden tragic losses. I lost my husband in 2020, and
Oh, I'm sorry to
he
hear
was, thank you, young and not an out of order death, not something you think is going to happen to you. And that took me out of the business for well over 2 years. And that's being generous to me. And the business ran really without me. But I think the growth this year has been the result of me really being engaged in the business and pushing that side of it more. So we are growing. We've taken on a bunch of new clients, but we're careful about the kinds of clients we take on. And these are all mostly younger, like I said earlier, younger business owners that are successful, that need a lot of help. And we've built this next gen team. So we have
right.
advisors of all ages. And so you have to in order to deal with next generation wealth, women who are coming into wealth, and multi-generational families now, which might have been a first generation when I started, but now the wealth is transitioning. You have to build a team like that, or what happens is what happens in almost every other financial advisory practice or RIA. The next generation goes to somebody else. They leave because they're typically not hiring their parents' advisor. So we built a team because, again, it's just practical. It isn't, oh, we're so smart. It's just practically speaking, what are we trying to build? I'm trying to
Yeah.
do the same thing. So personally, so I understand it.
Yeah. And if people want to contact you directly or learn more about you, where do they go?
We have a website. I would always say if you want to contact me, go to LinkedIn and I'll respond to you. And our website takes inquiries too, and you can easily get to me through that.
Okay. And we'll put those on the note.
Great.
All right. Lori, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Sterling Insights. Stand out and supercharge your assets, where we provide the info you need from successful leading financial advisors, lawyers, and CPAs. Your hosts, Roger and Catherine Silk, invite you to learn more about Sterling Foundation Management by visiting sterlingfoundations.com.